Demonstrations continue across America after the killing of 2 African-American men and 5 police officers. An in-depth look at China's involvement in Africa's development. A yellow fever outbreak across Central Africa prompts officials to vaccinate millions of people. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. U.S. President Barack Obama is speaking Tuesday in Dallas, Texas, at an interfaith memorial service for 5 police officers killed last week in a sniper attack. It will be the 11th time during his presidency that he has addressed the community following a mass shooting. White House spokesman Josh Earnest says the president will try to reach out not just to those in Dallas who are grieving, but the entire nation.
The president recognizes that it's not just people in Dallas who are grieving, but people all across the country who are concerned about the violence that so many Americans have witnessed in the last week or so. And the truth is, this is violence that we've been witnessing not just in the last week, but far too often over the last several years.
More than 1,000 people attended a candlelight vigil Monday in Dallas, where Police Chief David Brown compared officers to superheroes. Brown says the Dallas Police Department always focuses on accomplishing the mission, and their mission now is helping the families understand how to conquer this tragedy. President Obama is to meet Wednesday at the White House with law enforcement officials, activists, academics, and civil rights leaders to try to push forward dialogue on finding solutions to the disconnect between police and people in many communities. Now, sparked by recent deaths of 2 African-American men by law enforcement officers and the killing of 5 Dallas police officers by an African-American man, demonstrations in major American cities reflect the outrage of the citizens. But while some target racial discrimination, others demand police reform, and still others blame violence on weak gun laws and social inequalities. VOA's Laritza Hoke has more.
In the past few days, Americans of every race have taken to the streets protesting racism. This protester in Chicago expressed what many African Americans feel.
Black people don't get fair treatment. We used to be former slaves. We were segregated. Less than 50 years ago, we just got the right to vote. We got a black president, but that's not enough. We need a lot more change.
Some Americans say law enforcement policies have become too oppressive for all.
This is a system that only meets the interests of the ruling forces who rule over this system. It does not have the interest of humanity at heart. Now is the time for people to be in the streets, protesting these outrageous murders that go on, month in, month out, year in, year out. And people are tired of it. People are outraged. They want justice.
But law enforcement jobs are more dangerous than ever, and officers are under too much pressure, says Dallas Police Chief David Brown.
We're asking cops to do too much in this country. We are. We're just asking us to do too much. Every societal failure, we put it off on the cops to solve. Not enough mental health funding. Let the cop handle it. Not enough drug addiction funding. Let's give it to the cops. Here in Dallas, we got a loose dog problem. Let's have the cops chase loose dogs. Schools fail. Give it to the cops.
There also is rising frustration with the power of the gun industry to block any law that could curtail lucrative weapons sales. Gun lobbyists argue that armed civilians could help stop active shooters before the police arrive.
They always say, we're there to stop the next mass shooting, but they hear the gunfire and run away, so, where's that reaction that they're supposed to have? Massive protests are a sign of widespread discontent, but also societal divisions in the country.
If this country doesn't get united, we're going to fall apart.
And given recent events, that is a big challenge that lies ahead. Laritza Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, a Zimbabwean preacher leading the biggest protests against President Robert Mugabe in a decade, was arrested and charged with inciting public violence. In a pre-recorded video, he urged activists to go ahead with demonstrations planned for Wednesday. Baptist Minister Ivan Makori, who was issued a series of online videos tapping into mounting public anger over corruption, high unemployment and economic wars, has since April become the face of a popular social media movement. Makori called for a one-day shutdown protest last week that closed businesses across the nation, the biggest strike action since 2005. Human rights lawyers say the law under which Makori has been charged carries a prison sentence of up to 10 years. China is heavily involved in Africa's development, making loans, building infrastructure and creating businesses that employ Africans. As Beijing's footprint on the continent continues to grow, some are welcoming it, but as VOA's Jeffrey Young reports, others worry that China is largely focused on extracting Africa's wealth as colonial powers did a century ago.
When China's President Xi Jinping visited the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in Johannesburg last December, he pledged $60 billion U.S. in loans and development projects for Africa. That's triple what Beijing offered at the same forum 3 years earlier. Xi also promised to train 200,000 African workers, even bringing some to China to accomplish that. Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe praised China at the forum as a vital partner that had never colonized Africa.
Africa and China need to work together to ensure that road, rail, air, power, and water infrastructures are put in place. In addition, equipment and appropriate technology offered by the Chinese will help us extract and process our abundant resources.
Peter Fabricius of South Africa's Institute for Strategic Studies, in a Skype interview, explained why many see China's activities as no different from the exploitations of the colonialists.
For example, there's criticism that the trade between China and Africa is highly imbalanced, and that's because, you know, we import a whole bunch of manufactured goods and we export a lot of raw materials.
Beijing's One Belt, One Road trading strategy for Africa includes industrial zones along the Suez Canal, rail systems in Kenya, and seaports in Tanzania, all of which could help transport Africa's raw materials to China for manufacturing needs. Some analysts see another possible motive for China's investments. The Africa director of Washington's Atlantic Council, Peter Pham, says Beijing is trying to endear itself to African governments to create a sphere of influence.
Well, very much so. It certainly ingratiates itself with governments who get large projects, often politically well-timed in the electoral cycle of many African countries.
Peter Pham adds that many Chinese-backed projects are announced with great fanfare but never completed. He says projects that seem to get priority are those that help move natural resources on their way to China. China is also building a naval base in Djibouti, strategically located where the Red Sea meets the Gulf of Aden. Djibouti is not far from the mouth of the Persian Gulf, where the U.S. Fifth Fleet is based in Bahrain. Analyst Raffaello Pantucci of London's Royal United Services Institute tells VOA via Skype that Chinese policymakers see these moves as part of a geopolitical chess game in which they put bases in key locations to project power and protect shipping access.
I think that there are certainly hawks in the Chinese system who have a view of the world that is set out in this sort of geopolitical way. And they're still focused on a sort of geopolitical rivalry with the United States, and we'll see a lot of their moves in that kind of a light.
Pantucci and others say African states need to be more aggressive in negotiations with China, demanding that they build factories on the continent to process the natural resources extracted from Africa instead of just shipping them home. That way, they argue, Africans will get desperately needed jobs as part of the process of adding value to the raw materials. That in turn creates a more fair partnership rather than just a one-way street. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
Well, the U.S. state of Hawaii and the city of Rabat, Morocco, have developed a unique relationship over the past few years, starting with a twinning agreement in 2012. Since then, a number of events have marked their growing ties, the most recent of which was a lecture delivered by Dr. Maya Sotoron, an instructor at the University of Hawaii and half-sister of American President Barack Obama. Samia Erizuki reports.
On Monday, Dr. Maya Soetoro-Ng delivered a keynote lecture at the University of Mohammed V in Rabat, entitled Youth, Education, and Sustainable Development. The event was attended by a number of distinguished professors and government members, in addition to both local and international students. Dr. Maya Soetoro-Ng, half-sister of President Barack Obama, holds a PhD in educational foundations and teaches a number of subjects, including peace education, the history of peace movements, and leadership for social change. During her lecture at the university, Dr. Maya applauded Morocco's measures in renewable energy and reforms, also emphasizing cultural exchange between Morocco and Hawaii. Dr. Maya also used the event as an opportunity to hone in on the flourishing ties between Hawaii and Rabat, which the state of Hawaii celebrates every year with Morocco Appreciation Day on November 30th.
Both Hawaii and Morocco are places of great diversity and moderation in many ways, and places that are meeting grounds and bridges, and where there is enough complexity to mandate dialogue and enough goodwill to lead to I think lasting friendship, not just between us, but that can be fostered and nourished in other parts of the world.
Among the participants were a diverse group of students who came to both draw lessons from Dr. Maya's lecture, in addition to building networks with other like-minded students committed to promoting education and sustainable development.
I was informed about this event, and I thought it would be the perfect platform to meet young people that want to achieve something. I don't know much about the topic, but I want to learn more, and I think this is the perfect platform because there's a cocktail of different nationalities, different people, and people who actually have experience and knowledge about the topic.
So the Hawaii delegation is very honored to be here for the Youth Summit on Sustainable Development, and we're just thrilled because of the cultural exchange that will take place between us and the students and youth from other countries, because there's so many lessons learned that we can share and that we can gather from other places, and we're just very thrilled to be here.
Dr. Maya's lecture is part of a 3-day visit in the country, during which she will visit the city of Dakhla to participate in the 4th Annual International Youth Forum. Her visit comes on the heels of Michelle Obama's visit to Marrakesh, where she too promoted access to youth education, particularly for young girls. Samia Erizuki for VOA, Rabat, Morocco.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, U.S. Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region attends Burundi's peace talks in Arusha. Stay with us.
This is Greenbeat for a healthier planet.
Hope is a place in Africa for a 2-ton rhinoceros who has had her horn sheared off along with part of her face. Dr. Gerhard Steenkamp says the rhino they call Hope is better, but she still has a long way to go.
Over this year, the wound has decreased about 60% in size. So there's definitely been some improvement.
Hope was attacked by poachers for her horn, which is highly prized in parts of Asia. Many rhinos often survive attacks by poachers. That's when the conservation group Saving the Survivors steps in.
We're trying a new technique where we're putting virtually elastic bands across the face. You can apply this tension, chronic, constant tension over a long period of time, and eventually it'll bring the soft tissues together.
Despite the severity of the wound, the veterinarians believe she will eventually be able to continue her life in the wild. I'm Rebecca Ward for VOA's Green Beat.
Well, it's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with a look at viral hepatitis. Lino.
New research published in The Lancet says viral hepatitis is one of the leading killers across the globe, with a death toll that matches AIDS or tuberculosis. The report estimates that hepatitis infections and their complications led to 1.45 million deaths in 2013, despite the existence of vaccines and treatments. World Health Organization data shows there were 1.2 million AIDS-related deaths in 2014, while tuberculosis led to 1.5 million deaths. Scientists from Imperial College London and the University of Washington examined data from 183 countries collected between 1990 and 2013. They found that the number of deaths linked to viral hepatitis rose by more than 60% over 2 decades, partly due to a growing population. Now, Israeli drug maker Oramed Pharmaceuticals says its experimental oral insulin has succeeded in safely reducing nighttime blood glucose levels in patients with type 2 diabetes. Oramed says the new drug, known as ORMD-0801, uses a protective coating and a high enough dose of insulin so that most of it can be destroyed and still deliver a clinically beneficial amount of the hormone. The study is surprising because until now, many scientists, they thought insulin couldn't survive the onslaught of digestive juices. The 28-day research involved 180 patients at 33 sites in the United States. Oramed's chief executive, Nadav Kidron, says the drug's mid-stage trial shows there could be a healthier alternative to insulin injections.
When you give it as an injection, it goes straight into the bloodstream. But when we give it orally, it goes first pass to the liver. It's a portal to the liver. And the liver is the organ that regulates the secretion of the insulin into the bloodstream. So that's why it's the healthier, more physiological way to treat diabetes through the oral insulin.
And the results must be replicated in a larger phase 3 trial before the drug can be submitted for approval. Now to Africa, millions of people are set to be vaccinated in the Central African region to contain a yellow fever outbreak in the region. Take a look. The World Health Organization is leading a massive yellow fever vaccination campaign this month in Central Africa to prevent the national and international spread of this deadly disease. The campaign aims to vaccinate 15.5 million people in Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo. A yellow fever outbreak began late last year in the Angolan capital, Luanda, and spread quickly across the country. The disease also spread to neighboring DRC. The 2-month vaccination campaign is being held in advance of the rainy season, which is in September, when mosquitoes are more prevalent and transmission rises. Bruce Elwood is the WHO Executive Director of Outbreaks and Health Emergencies.
Over the next 2 months, we have an opportunity, and we'll try to vaccinate 15.5 million people across Kinshasa, the capital city of Democratic Republic of the Congo, the border area between the two countries, and then other areas of Angola, in one of the largest yellow fever emergency response campaigns ever conducted.
Yellow fever is an acute viral disease that can cause liver damage and turn the skin yellow. It is transmitted by the Aedes aegypti mosquito, the same mosquito that transmits the Zika virus. Dr. Elwood says massive outbreaks of yellow fever can occur in urban settings because mosquitoes can rapidly infect thousands of people. Currently, yellow fever mainly persists in Africa's remote rural areas, and not since the 1970s has it threatened a major city.
The goal will be to stop all transmission in these key areas in advance of the high season for transmission later this year, and thereby prevent explosive outbreaks in these major metropolises and potential international spread far beyond.
The WHO says there are more than 1,300 suspected and 68 confirmed cases of yellow fever in the DRC, and 75 have died. Angola has 3,500 suspected cases and over 860 confirmed cases of the disease. The Red Cross recently launched a $1.4 million emergency appeal to fight the spread of yellow fever in Angola, which faces its worst outbreak in 30 years. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @Lenormoudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thank you very much. Now be sure to watch the Nomadu's health updates every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, the second round of the Burundi dialogue started Tuesday in Arusha, Tanzania. Facilitated by Tanzania's former president, Benjamin William Mkapa, the talks, which are expected to end on Friday, seek to resolve a political crisis that has raised fears Burundi might slide into an ethnic conflict. Thomas Perriello, the U.S. Special Envoy for the Great Lakes region of Africa, is attending the talks. He spoke to VOA's Frederick Nkundikije shortly before he left for Arusha.
We know there have been concerns raised by both sides. The opposition has made very clear that they expect to be seated as a united opposition under the auspices of SENARED, the opposition coalition. And they have presented in multiple forums the importance of that being seated in a unified fashion. We know that President Mkapa has been working with them on whether there is some way to proceed, and we are looking for all sorts of creativity and urgency in how this can be solved, because we think it's so important to get everyone together, even if that ends up being shuttle diplomacy rather than everyone at a single table. The government has raised concerns about the location in Arusha. We actually think the location doesn't matter as long as it's a safe space, though certainly reinforcing the importance of the Arusha Accords that ended so many years and even decades of a cycle of violence in the country is a good reminder of the stakes that are at play here for civilians across Burundi.
Former Tanzanian President Benjamin Mkapa met with SENARED, the opposition alliance, in Brussels a few weeks ago, and they impressed upon him that they are the viable opposition group to be able to negotiate with the government of Burundi. Still, when the office of the facilitator issued the invitations, SENARED never got the invitation as a group. Do you think this is going to have an impact on the consultations?
Well, you know, there were some mistakes made in the last round, and I think President Mkapa deserves a lot of credit for taking those challenges head on. I think he's been very clear, both in his statements and in his actions, that he is willing to meet with all sides and is looking to be very inclusive in this attempt to find an end to the crisis in Burundi. SENARED has raised some very serious concerns about being seated in a unified fashion. President Museveni, as moderator during the Entebbe round, talked about the importance of everyone being at the table, and we are certainly hoping for a relatively rapid dialogue and conclusion, and then limiting the number of actors at the beginning seems to make sense to that. But we're going to defer to the facilitator and his team on the right way to proceed and encourage all sides to participate.
Are you optimistic that the consultations, the dialogue, is going to bear fruit?
It's a solvable problem if the stakeholders come to the table in good faith, if we build on the foundations of the Arusha Accords that helped bring such a violent period in Burundi's history to a close and build a foundation of a decade of peace, of integrated institutions that got beyond some of the old ethnic divisions, particularly in the military and in the faith community. So we know the Burundian people have made this commitment and built this foundation. It's a question of whether their leaders have come along with them. And we think the resilience of the Burundian people is a foundation, along with the Arusha Accords, for hopefulness. But it's going to require some statesmanship from leaders on both sides to figure out how to come together to show the same commitment to a peaceful and integrated Burundi that we've seen among the civilian population.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Nintendo's new app, Pokemon Go, takes the mobile world by storm. We'll be right back.
An immediate arms embargo on South Sudan. Second, enact additional targeted sanctions on leaders and parliament.
Heartfelt condolence goes to the family and to their countries. And we want to say
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They tell you what people are talking about. So for an in-depth look at the stories trending high on social media, turn to #VOA. It's not your typical talk show. From politics to pop culture, #VOA brings in the people leading the conversation, engages the audience, and gets answers to your questions. #VOA. Smart talk for smart people.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Nintendo's new app, Pokemon Go, is taking the mobile world by storm. But the new game is having unintended consequences. The game allows players to walk around real-life neighborhoods while seeking virtual Pokemon game characters on their smartphone screens. A scavenger hunt that has boosted Nintendo's market value to $7.5 billion. However, the popularity of the new app is not just being noticed by Wall Street. Outside St. Louis, the game has been linked to a series of crimes against distracted users. Using a beacon function in the game, thieves lured the unexpected gamers to a vacant lot and robbed them of their belongings. Well, next up, there is no blank space in Taylor Swift's bank account. Now, the singer-songwriter tops Forbes' annual list of the 100 highest-paid celebrities with $170 million. The Shake It Off crooner's star-studded 1989 world tour earned more than $200 million last year. Other top 10 earners include boy band One Direction at number 2 with $110 million, actor-comedian Kevin Hart at number 6 with $87.5 million, and Adele at number 9 with $80.0 million. That is $80.5 million. Kim Kardashian is featured on the magazine's cover. She's number 42 on the list with $51 million. Forbes says 40% of her paycheck this year came from our mobile game Kim Kardashian Hollywood. Well, and finally, you're looking at the latest fitness craze in Indonesia, military fitness basic training. It's the first of its kind in the Southeast Asian country. The class incorporates sandbags, agility, ladders, ropes, chains, and tires, all combined with good old-fashioned circuit training. An average session lasts 60 minutes. After warming up, the group take turns pulling 15-kilogram sandbags and moving barrel ropes for up to 1 minute. Founder Elbeli No Tiwur moved to the U.S. when he was 11 years old. In 2010, he completed U.S. Marine Corps training in San Diego, California, and spent 4 years in service. In 2014, he returned to Indonesia to set up his first training sessions, and that is what is trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words. This word is one that you might hear in stories about crime.
In what officials describe as a bold and courageous operation, U.S. forces quietly moved into an area near still dangerous Benghazi Sunday, capturing Ahmed Abu Khattala, the suspected ringleader of the 2012 attack that left 4 Americans dead.
Ringleader is 2 words put together. Ring and leader. It means the person in charge of a group of people. Usually, they are involved in something illegal.
Our story was about the capture of the suspected ringleader of the 2012 attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. Now, when you hear the word ringleader,
your American English will be good enough to know what this news word means.